This is Proxy Countdown. Welcome to the big show for the week of May 11th, 2026, alongside my tag team partner, Matt Moscardi. I'm Damian Rawlis. On today's countdown, proof that Berkshire Hathaway has always been fake frugal, companies following their own rules, Victoria's Secret rejects a Brett Blundy, a wrap-up of 150 meeting results over the past 2 weeks, and on the big vote, Matt accepts my BlackRock, JP Morgan, Northrop Grumman, Home Depot meeting challenge. Although maybe it's not pretty. Not a fun All right. Let's get to our top stories. So we were off. And we had 2 weeks to cover it. I don't know if this is a consistent pattern with this time of year, maybe because they're busy with meetings, but it's like nothing happened. I scoured so many 8Ks and I don't know, nothing. The most exciting.
You mean like the results weren't interesting?
The results, I'm going to get to the results later, but in the traditional item 5.02 where they announce director and executive changes. There's no movement. There's no, sure. But maybe that's just because they're busy with other stuff. Let's start with Berkshire Hathaway. There's a CFO transition. Charles Chang is taking over from Marc Hamburg. First of all, Chang is getting a annual cash salary of $8 million. No CFO anywhere makes $8 million in cash. But second of all, this is what I want to focus on.
I think they do now.
Okay, well, it's absurd. The second one is the former CFO stepping down. He is getting a perk until 2037 every year. And if he dies, his spouse gets this. He gets up to 30 hours a year on a mid-sized NetJet aircraft. Worth up to about $500,000 a year. Basically, they're going to fly him around wherever he wants for the next 11 years. What happened to the frugality, the folksy? I have a Diet Coke and McDonald's kind of thing.
Actually, it's funny that you're worried about that. I'm worried about the fact that the flight from New York City to Los Angeles is 6 hours. He can only take that flight twice a year before he uses his entire year allotment.
Well, he lives in Omaha, so he won't be going from LA to, right? It's only half good. Trips.
Yeah.
At Emerson Electric, they found a third woman for the board, Jennifer Newstead. That's
where'd they find her?
I don't know. And a lot going on at General Mills. Long tenured director Steve Odland is stepping down. He started in 2004. There's I noticed a bit of a trend with people being on boards that really shouldn't be. That they have a new COO, Dana McNabb, and she's been at the company since 1999, and she's also going to become a director. I don't know why they need her on the board, but that's it. I don't know. Those are the big stories, but I also have some dumb stuff that I noticed. Like, for instance, at Grumman, Mark Kaler has been appointed as a Class 2 director, serving a term that won't expire until 2029. How about that? So, no vote on him, no nothing until 2029.
Well, that feels like a long time away, but it is only 3 years at this point. So,
at Trade Desk, Samantha Jacobson is resigning as Chief Strategy Officer, but will stay on the board. Again, I don't really see the value of that. It's supposed to be an independent oversight of management.
I'm just sort of I'm just perpetually flabbergasted by that. Everything. It keeps happening. At some point, you just start to think just like with dual class shares. I refuse to think that they should exist, but they keep existing, and then you just kind of throw up your hands and you're like, I guess this is where we're at.
It's like us and maybe Jim McRitchie, or we're the only people who don't take this for granted as a thing.
Yes. Yeah.
At Occidental Petroleum, I feel like you talked about this recently, a different case of this. So Vicky Holub is stepping down as CEO. She's being replaced by Richard Jackson. Vicky's staying on the board, of course. Now, here's the funny thing. Richard Jackson was added to the board on April 30th, despite the fact that he's not starting as CEO until July. They had a meeting the next day on May 1st, and he wasn't up for a vote. I don't get that one. Right? I just don't get that. You had a meeting right there.
Yeah.
You had a vote right there.
I'm a little bit confused because they had to just wait one day to get a vote.
Right.
Maybe he was gone that day. I don't understand that. He had a prior engagement.
At Plains All-American Pipeline, they added Cynthia Taylor to the board. I like this one. The former CEO of Oil States International will join the Health, Safety, Environmental, and Sustainability Committee.
That actually, I've seen that in a lot of places. Oil and gas is somehow environmental safety.
And then 3 companies that did the right thing. WEC Energy, Gail Klappa, having reached the applicable retirement age per the corporate governance guidelines, has completed his service as chair of the board and is stepping down.
Completed his service. I like the way that reads.
Commerce Bank shares. Benjamin Rossier III retired due to the mandatory retirement requirements.
I didn't know that happened anywhere. That's good.
And then at TTM Technologies, John Mayer resigned.
Not the John Mayer.
I don't know. Probably not. Resignation was required due to his attainment of the mandatory retirement age. I don't know about that diction there, but
yeah, can we dispense? It doesn't all have to be legalese. It doesn't. His attainment of the mandatory.
I feel like this is a shot to Apple, who as an example, is always ignoring their own rules. They say
twice for Ron Sugar. 2 years.
They said. And the board was obligated to accept his resignation per the company's corporate governance guidelines. So they had to add that in. Not only does he have to retire, but we're obligated to accept the.
You're supposed to do this. They literally wrote that down. Yeah, I like that.
Let's move over to our proxy cage matches. I'm going to start with one, then I'm going to let you describe the other one. At Swatch shareholders reject activist investors' bid for board seat, but I hate that. That's the headline, because the reality is that this is a guy named Stephen Wood who he owns about half a percent of Swatch. He tried to get on the board. He was actually backed by ISS and Glass Lewis. Of course, Swatch said he was not suited to represent shareholders, which, I mean, he already is a significant shareholder, but put that aside, right?
Yeah. Other than his shareholdings, he's not suited.
And I would love to actually, just like the so-called meritocracy, which we all know is fake, I would love to actually see the criteria that makes you suited or not suited to represent shareholders, because
there's no number for that.
There's actually a vote too, really, right? And
yeah.
I mean, technically, the corpse of O.J. Simpson could try out, and they could vote him in, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't know why I picked that.
That would be a harder sell than you'd think. Yeah.
But here's the background: is that there's a dual class share system. Yes, even at Swiss companies. So the Hayek family controls 40% of voting rights, despite not controlling that many in the actual shares. That has helped CEO Nick Hayek and Chair Nyla Hayek, both children of the founder Nicholas Hayek, maintain control. So really, it's not shareholders rejecting the activist investors' seat. It's the two nepo babies of the founder. So I don't know. Get your Reuters, kind of get it right.
In fairness, they are also shareholders.
Yeah, sure, but they have fake. It's fake share. I don't know, what is it. It's not real shareholdings.
They have mostly fake shares. Yeah.
All right, and then at Victoria's Secret, and try to sum this up quickly. We covered this in too much detail for our Friday show, but Victoria's Secret rejects activist investor Brett Blundy's board push. What's the background there? I know he controls like 12% of the shares.
Yeah, he owns a significant portion of the shares, more than 10% of the shares. He's been trying to get board seats for a little while, actually since even before the latest CEO was appointed. And he wanted, I think, initially 4 board seats. And since he wanted to put himself on the board, and this was the big reveal, he wanted to put himself on the board, and Victoria's Secret has been negotiating with him. The board has been negotiating with him. He has called for the ouster of the chair and a woman, Miriam Nansify, who he claims is responsible for a bad acquisition of a online, retailer.
Okay.
But Victoria's Secret's board has rejected his appointment to the chair, him joining the board itself, because the reveal was there would be too much reputational damage from the fact that at every company or companies he's controlled, there have been allegations of rampant sexual harassment by executives and at companies he's controlled, including in the employee policies. Now, the result of that rejection was he's gone full activist. He's now no longer, trying to do something with the board. Now he's saying, vote for my candidates.
Victoria's Secret, a company with female power. The board is dominated by women, and so are the executives.
And Brett Blundy is the chair of the board of
Sexual harasser.
He's the chair of the board of an Australian company called Lavisa that does fast fashion jewelry.
Yeah.
And on his company's board, there's only one woman that isn't his wife.
Yeah, his wife's on the board.
And the executives of that company are all men.
So the reason why I had you explain this is I'm hoping that Swatch is listening, because this is someone who's not suited to represent shareholders.
Yeah, correct.
Yes,
correct.
That's right. Okay, let's move on to our vote results table. 153 very large cap meetings since May 1st. That's a lot. We have some wins. First of all, there are how many? I'll ask you how many. Shareholder proposals. How many would you think? How many would you think? Would you guess there were? What number of shareholder proposals?
At this point in the season,
153 meetings.
Yeah, that's a lot of meetings happening and a lot of large cap companies all happening at the same time. I'd say probably 15.
Right. It's higher. I actually think it's higher too. It's well, I know the number, but I was surprised. Is what I'm trying to say. 82.
Wow, 82 proposals.
So the big fear is that they're all going away. They're not really all going away, but I don't know how the numbers compare to last year. But 4 wins, all corporate governance wins. Vertex Pharmaceuticals act by written consent, 57% yes. Albemarle call a special meeting, giving the shareholders the right to call a special meeting, 57% yes. CF Industries excessive golden parachutes actually won with 51% yes. And then again, call for special, giving the shareholders the right to call for a special shareholder meeting at Energy. What kind of a name is that for a company?
Energy.
Yeah.
56%
yes. So those are the victories. And then in no random order, I'm going to cover some other things. I looked at all the hate proposals, and there were several. And they're all from the same people now. National Center for Public Policy Research, the Heritage Foundation, Boyer Research, and then the other one, National Center for Public Policy Research. These, and they're all not only are they all coming from a few representatives, but they're all like parroting each other, right? They're all repeating the same talking points. It's either, according to the 1792 Exchange's corporate bias ratings. That's a popular one, and yes. What that's referring to is a world where we're relying on the system set in place by people in 1792, the white men, the slave owners, before women had the right to vote, before black people were even considered actual human beings, right? That's what they're basing. Yeah.
No, I think you actually give them too much credit.
Okay.
Right. I've read the methodology of the 1792 exchange.
How dare you? 1792.
Sorry. The 1792 exchange basically uses some anti-DEI kind of stuff, but the way these all work, when you get into it, is they do not have access to the data, or they have to buy it from an ESG provider.
I wasn't giving them credit for having any methodology or criteria. I just thought it was especially extra hateful that they're referring to a group that calls itself 1792.
But like, I think they don't even espouse 1792 because they can't do 2026, right? Like,
okay. So you're calling them
the gap.
dopes.
Yeah, that's the gap I'm talking about.
The other thing that they rely on is something called I called it the being good might cost too much.
Yeah, that is a new pattern this year,
right? Yeah. Where they're like, I don't know about like going against sustainability or DEI or plastics, whatever, because it's like it might cost too much. So whether it's good or bad, we're not going to weigh into, but it might cost money. So let's not do that. And then the other one they like is whenever they have this phrase, but they've repeated several times. And this is like a dog whistle for something. And it, like, as an example, Inspire Investing, this is one of the new proponents, had one called transgender healthcare treatments for minors. Yes, that's actually
incredibly specific. Yeah,
despite decades of people on the right ripping their hair out, that's why there's so many bald white golfers, by the way.
That's
because they're so angry about the politicization of everything, and yet they especially share proposals, right? They're mad at the politics that get the insipid politics that's leaked its way into corporate America. They're putting on proposals like transgender healthcare treatments for minors.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, they did that at American Express, and the way that they always lead into this is by just saying this, and they say this for several companies, but as an example, they say American Express company scored 100 on the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index. That's their mic drop moment in their proposal. That to them is their way of saying that American Express is a horrible company by scoring high 100 on the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index. Anyway, they use that one several times. And
I wish it was the 1792 exchange that mentioned the Human Rights Campaign as the bad thing. That would be fun.
Yeah,
that would be almost funnier if the time when slave ownership was acceptable and black people were 3/5 of a human, that they were calling out a company for having human rights as a thing.
And I'm going to call these out every week. I'm going to call these out for their insipid hate that they do. But here are the takeaways. Here are the results. 1% yes, 2%. They did get a few 2%. 2% yes, 2% yes, 0.87% yes, 0.8%, 0.4% yes, another 0.4% yes. These are jokes. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, well, I'm
glad they're being rejected so resoundingly, but what are we doing here?
But if you look at it, National Legal Policy Center appears or National Center for Public Policy Research appears at least one on each of these, and it's on a lot of them, and they're also coupling these with independent board chairs, separation of CEO and chair roles, which ups their average, so that when they go to their donors, they can say, "Hey, look, we're getting increased support." When really they're just asking for the same thing that has been asked for.
But I just don't know decades. How they can. And this is not a left or right thing to me, but your whole pretense here is you're attacking the left for putting politics onto these proposals, and that's all you do. And they get no support, and yet they're reappearing this year.
I think they just didn't like that they thought the left was doing it and they weren't. So now it's just swapped. Now the left's not allowed to, and only they are. What percentage of the proposals, I have not looked, are anti-woke proposals? I mean, it seems like of the 82, even just the ones that you called out, there's got to be a dozen here out of the 82 that you pulled that are anti-woke.
It looks like about 15 to 20%.
That's like, there's three groups, right? There's Chaved and McRitchie, the governance gadflies, and then there's the ESG sort of as you sows kind of group, and then there's the nuns. Sort of anti-woke group. And my guess is when the season is done, we're going to see the anti-woke group be the dominant group. Whereas in history, it has been McRitchie and Chaved and the gadflies.
Well, here's where I'll disagree with that. At least based on the data this week, is that the traditional governance proposals really seem to be getting a lot of play. Like, for instance, there were 19 independent board chair votes up in the last 2 weeks. Although, to your
some
point,
of those are National Center for Public Policy Research.
To your point, I didn't actually pull the proponents in all of those, and I wonder if that's why there's such a deviation in results. Because, as an example, and none of these passed somehow. To me, this is like the most this is like the easiest place to start with sound corporate governance, right? You split the role of CEO and chair. It's just like 101 corporate governance. Bob Monks is literally rolling over in his grave because it's stupid that your CEO would set the agenda of the oversight board. But that aside, so you have scores as high as like 46% yes at West Pharmaceutical Services, but then you're at 12% yes at Aflac, 15% at Berkshire, 18% at Corning. So maybe those numbers are down because they're actually coming from the hate groups, and people don't want to say, they don't want to support anything from the hate groups.
The data we know from last year is that regardless of what the National Legal Public Policy Research Center, whatever, those groups, the two main groups in particular, Boyer Research as well, whatever they decide to actually put on the ballot gets lower. Even if investors agree with the premise, even if they're doing a separation of CEO and chair, you generally will get lower votes because of the proponent. We know that these are proponent-driven votes, and investors trust certain proponents and don't trust others. We know that.
Moving over to pay, I thought there'd be more this year. Pay, I only pulled out 4 notable high pay votes out of 155 meetings. 2 were the classics. Omnicom Group, 44% no on pay, which is really high.
It's pretty high.
And yet average support of directors, 97% yes.
Doesn't make sense.
Same thing at Molina Healthcare, 47% no on pay, average support 97% for all directors. Now Goldman Sachs sort of got it right. 30% no on pay, which is really high for Goldman Sachs. Pay committee chair Kimberly Harris, 26% no. So I guess that's some alignment.
Roughly 1-to-1,
right?
Yeah.
But here's the other one I wanted to point out, and this is, again, pointing out the fake folksy BS of Berkshire Hathaway. I let off the show by saying that, first of all, the CFO's getting $8 million in salary. Second of all, they're giving an outrageous waste of shareholder money to the retiring CFO so he can fly around, right?
Yeah.
For until 2037, and yet shareholders at Berkshire Hathaway had a vote this year. They're supporting a say on pay vote only once every 3 years now. 66% supporting that they're only going to vote on say on pay once every 3 years. So wasn't this the company that made famous these shareholder meetings, like getting everyone together and sharing of ideas
and having some
that you're important, we're important, I love you, you love us, and now they're just like, we're doing outrageous things with pay, but we don't even want to hear your opinion on it anymore. So anyway, that's the pay votes. And then finally, I have a few other things before I hand off. We actually had some directors, only 2, but we had 2 directors lose their votes. Because you ask every year, are we ever going to have directors get a majority no vote when it's not about attendance? Yeah, we got 2. At Trade Desk, Andrea Cunningham, 67% against her reelection. Although this is a little bit odd because only 2 directors were up for vote, and she was the only Class A director up for a vote, which means that was the only avenue that shareholders had to protest, because the CEO and chair, Jeff Green, was also up for a vote, but he was a different class, and that was controlled by dual class shareholders, so he got 92% yes. So I don't know if Andrea was a protest vote, and it was a plurality vote. So she got reelected anyway. And I just couldn't figure it out. I opened up the proxy. I have no idea why they're targeting her. Maybe it's just a general protest.
Yeah, a lot of these plurality plus classified boards. Basically the vote no's I see come in 2 flavors. They come in attendance failure, or they come in classified board plus plurality vote. And it's really, to your point, it's a protest vote against whoever's up for election.
Yeah.
And they don't like that they have something about. Apparently, we aren't fussed about dual class shares. We aren't as fussed about CEO chair combinations. We do not like both plurality plus classified board. That is a recurring pattern over the last 4 years where we see that's where vote no's come from.
Service Corp International. So 4 directors got about 20% against their reelection, which is already high. And then Marcus Watts, the lead independent director, 57% no. Huge vote. Again, I've been at this game for way too long. I don't know why. We have a lot of smart listeners, and I'm hoping someone will reach out and tell me why Marcus Watts. The company hasn't decided yet whether they're going to make him step down or not. They already said that they're going to think about it. But I don't know. I didn't really see anything unless it's just a protest vote But why him and why not go right after the CEO? I don't know. I couldn't really follow this one. I will say at the same time at Service Corp, this is very unusual. They have this this vote, a management vote, limit the liability of officers. They call it the exculpation vote, which is usually passing. It actually failed here. 52% said no to this.
Wow, that's kind
big.
Of that's good. Finally, someone woke up that somebody should have liability.
Maybe Ann Lipton. Maybe they'll comment on this because I would like to know what's going on here. Clearly, that vote is aligned, right? You have to think that the shareholders voted no on both of those, right? Because they're both about 50% no. Wouldn't you think?
You'd have to assume, right?
But I don't really get it. And finally. I will point out something that I don't remember seeing this in the past, but 2 companies, NBR and DT Midstream, they struck a proposal from the official tally because it was not properly presented for a vote.
That happens
because
a lot.
The proponent failed to present the proposal personally or through a qualified representative at the annual meeting. So not only are we at a point where all the meetings are virtual in the first place, so who knows? Maybe their internet went down, right? We don't even know why. But this is, look, neither one of them passed, but they got good support. 30% for one and 47% for the other.
Tesla doesn't even let you show up. Like if you're a proponent, they you record.
But you're a massive corporation with a plus $2 billion market cap or whatever, and this is your excuse for excluding it because the person didn't show up. And yet we see companies ignore the will of shareholders, like at Netflix. J-Hogue doesn't show up to their own meeters, fails attendance, and they stay on the
stay on the board. Yeah, that's nuts. Yeah.
All right, I think I've said enough. We're really in the middle of proxy season now, and we didn't know what to do. So I was looking at next week's meetings, and I said, we got some classic companies coming up. We got JP Morgan, among many, but I pointed out JP Morgan Chase, BlackRock, Northrop Grumman, Home Depot, all classics. And I was like, Matt, tackle them all.
Yeah.
At first, you were excited, but you don't look too excited.
No, I stopped being excited very quickly.
Give people something, and let's move on.
All right, let's start. Let's start with an overview. First, just a high level look, and it's BlackRock, JP Morgan, Northrop Grumman, Home Depot. It's 4 companies, 4 lead independent directors, 4 CEO chair combinations. First thing that struck me, and this is what's infuriating. You just went over the lead independent or the independent board chair votes, right? And they spread from just under 40% to down to 4% in favor of lead independent directors or right. Independent chairs. In this case, the 4 lead independent director tenures are 26 years at BlackRock,
really?
That's Gerber, 22 years at JP Morgan, that's Burke, 17 years at Northrop, that's Kleiner, and 26 years at Home Depot, that's Brenneman.
Is this a coincidence? This feels funny to me. This is really high.
This is the average. The average lead independent director tenure is 12 years. And at large cap companies, it gets longer. I don't understand how a U.S. investor can think any of these people are remotely independent.
I was going to say, like, they're basically executives at this point. And not only that, but we're constantly reporting now that directors, chairs, lead independent directors are now being basically plucked off the boards and put immediately into executive roles because, well, first of all, no one does succession planning very well anymore, I guess. But second of all, where better to look than the fake
person who's been there for 25
board,
years.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, these boards actually split in half where you have BlackRock and JP Diamond. BlackRock, Larry Fink has been CEO of BlackRock for 28 years.
He founded the company,
so for 2 years, he was not with Gerber. Meanwhile, Diamond has been on the board for 22 years. And
Diamond's a special case because he actually said he can't be fired, right?
Well, it helps when your lead independent director has been there
buddy.
the same exact time as you've been there.
Yeah,
Burke and Diamond, 22 years apiece.
I mean, let alone the fact that this guy, Burke, let alone that he's practically an executive, knows everything about JP Morgan. Just think of the amount of personal time these two have spent together.
Yeah, no doubt. Just one-on-one.
Just like weddings, golf games, movies.
A couple of dudes.
Expensive dinners. Yeah, a couple of dudes.
And then you have the other two, where at Northrop, Warden's only been on the board for 7 years, and Decker's only been on a Home Depot board for 4 years. So you actually have lead independent directors that have been there twice or 3 times as long as the CEOs.
Right.
So there is a weird dichotomy there. All 4 of the boards have more than 30% women on the board, and JP Morgan has the largest power gap at negative 17%. JP Morgan is just a man-run board with a lot of women on it.
I will say this, and I'm not clear where I land on this, but where I don't mind it as much, it kind of reminds me of European companies. So if you do have a relatively new CEO, but you have a longer tenured lead independent director, at least there's some kind of a power balance there. But when it's Larry Fink and and was it Ross? I don't know his name.
Murray Gerber, yeah.
Morgan Gerber. When they've both been there for almost 3 decades, right? I mean, Fink is completely protected, right?
Well, yes.
At least a CEO with a low tenure has someone powerful.
But I do
back.
think in the case of like Northrop with Warden and Home Depot with Decker as newer CEOs, why on earth do they retain the chair role?
I don't know.
I mean, you have a lead independent director who's been there for a super long time. Just make them the chair and have the CEO come in as just a CEO. You separated the roles and it's nice and neat and clean. There's no need to inherit the chair role.
Because the CEOs, it must be part of the negotiation process. Not only do they want a golden hello and a ton of money that goes up every year, no matter how the stock price goes, they want power. They want to control the agenda on the board.
So the other thing I took away from looking at these 4 companies is, while the knowledge is mostly aligned at Home Depot, at BlackRock, and JP Morgan, in finance, actually, the knowledge is almost always aligned because everyone in finance gets economics, degrees and accounting degrees, and
they're everywhere.
And they're everywhere anyway. It's easy to get. So, so those boards tend to actually align with the industry of the company. But at Northrop Grumman, the knowledge is actually some of the worst, most confusing knowledge mixes I've ever seen. Okay, Northrop Grumman is a massive defense contractor, aerospace and defense.
They like to bomb stuff.
They make bombs, right? Here is where the directors come from. There are these are let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 directors on this board, including the lead independent director, who come from retail.
Really?
And by retail, I mean Winston comes from Bed Bath and Beyond.
It's not even successful retail.
Ross comes from Avon, like makeup.
I didn't know it still existed.
Home sales. Yeah. Fudge comes from Kraft General Mills.
Oh my God.
Shoei comes from Walmart. Abney from UPS.
That I kind of understand.
I mean, I guess UPS I get because there's a plane involved.
And Walmart basically like are city states at this point. Like they control like so much of the population.
Lead independent director Kleiner actually is from Hilton.
What?
The hotels.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Then you have 3 directors who are from the military, which makes sense on a military contractor.
Yeah, I don't know. You need 3 of them though, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, 3. I'm okay with 3, but then you have these 2 directors in Krishna who's the IBM CEO, and Brown, who sits on the IBM board with Krishna.
Yeah, you don't need both of them.
So what do you need them for? And that's it.
Yeah, I would take Brown because Krishna's got to be too busy to care about bombing people.
I don't understand. They're selling military devices. Do they sell them in the Walmart? Is this like, are they? I don't understand.
Probably not that far away from that, yeah.
Krishna's the closest to having AI experience on the board. He's an engineering, background, and IBM does AI stuff, but otherwise there's 0 people with like industrial production. There's 0 people with public safety knowledge.
At this point, I'm surprised there aren't like people from OpenAI on these kind of boards, right? Like those kind of crossovers.
This is by far the lowest core knowledge of this group.
Well, good. I don't really want
anybody.
I don't really want there to be.
But they're still building bombs. Do I really want them to? Yeah, like I don't want them to build bad bombs.
What you're suggesting here is that management is running this company without any real knowledgeable pushback.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But what I'm suggesting actually, and this is where I'm going with this, these 4 companies have in common. All 4 companies have greater than 50% of their directors are connected inside 1 or 2 degrees. In fact, there's a whopping 771 connection paths for the directors at these 4 companies. We're talking about, there's 50 directors at these companies, and they have 770 paths between them.
Doesn't surprise me. That's a lot.
But this is where it goes, right? This is professional boards.
Yeah.
This is a separation between the board and management, where management is left to do its own thing, and the board is basically its own entity, running itself, doing its own thing, inviting its own friends, and never the twain shall meet.
Right.
In fact, this is what I'm calling the Business Roundtable Board.
Okay.
And I'm calling it that for 2 major reasons. Number 1 is CEOs on the board. In fact, the presence of a CEO on the board for U.S. large caps has been steady over the last 4 years. It's hovered around 68%.
Well, those are not current CEOs.
Current or ex-CEOs, retired CEOs.
Do you know the distinction in that number? It must be.
I don't know the distinction.
CEOs,
well,
right?
I know on these 4, but I don't know the distinction overall. Although I could look it up, it's in the data.
I don't. I know this is like no one's asking me, but the former CEO thing doesn't bother me as much as the current CEO thing. I find it like gobsmacking to pretend that the CEO of IBM or Apple or whatever has time to care about these other boards they're on. I'm sorry.
I get there's the time element, but the time element is not the thing that I'm interested in. What makes it a Business Roundtable board is actually the CEO-ness of it.
Well, yeah.
Because like Ginny Rometty is on the JP Morgan board. She was the CEO of IBM.
Right.
And Krishna, who's like on the, I think which one of the boards? I think
Pepsi?
he's on the BlackRock board.
Okay.
Is the CEO of IBM, right? Like they're basically just swapping spots, but when you retire, it doesn't mean that you're gone. It means that you basically just retire into a different network. Well, the same network, but a different job where you're sitting on boards with the same people when you were the CEO.
It always, 2 things always go off my head when I hear this. First of all, the obvious one is that it's great for CEO pay, right? Because you especially see a lot of these people often on compensation committees. So it's beautiful for that, right? But the other thing is it just strikes me as a perfect way of ensuring that the CEO has the power, right? Because what a fellow CEO is going to defer to the CEO and just be like, let's not push back too much.
I was a CEO, or I am a CEO.
exactly.
Yeah. In fact, And this actually might answer your question. CEOs don't take, active CEOs don't take public board spots as much now.
Yes.
In the data today, I don't know what it is in the past, but in the data today of the roughly 1,000 U.S. large caps I was looking at, of the large cap CEOs I was looking at, which includes co-CEOs, only 359 are on other boards today. So 34% of active large cap CEOs are on other boards.
Still seems high. You mean talk about like the Tim Cook on
exactly
Nike
one other board is generally all it is. But we know anecdotally when we talk to board placement agents at Free Float that the CEOs are involved in selecting directors. Their directors aren't chosen strictly by the board, but they're run through the CEO.
To your point, in the court case this week between Elon Musk and Sam Altman, there was a detail that came out that to Elon Musk, as a power play or whatever, he said he offered to put Sam Altman on the Tesla board.
You're right. Exactly. Right. That's the trade.
And when I read that, I was like, wait a minute. Like what are we talking about here? That's not how the board is supposed to operate.
Well, that's how it does operate.
Yes.
And when the CEO is chair, we know that that's worse. But this is where this is like one of the things we couldn't tell in the data is where the CEOs are getting the other CEOs to join their boards. We couldn't find the connective tissue until we added trade associations, nonprofits, and college trustees to our connections database, which is where we found the connections between CEOs. So having a lot of CEOs on your board, in theory, isn't a problem, or ex-CEOs on your board, in theory, wouldn't necessarily be a problem, except that we know that the CEOs are all sitting on other boards together. They're just not public boards. They're nonprofit, trade association, or college trustee boards. There are 928 connections that run through the Business Roundtable board in our database. Those are all the membership of those boards. There's all CEOs.
Right.
That is actually dwarfed by over 1,400 connections that run through the Partnership for New York City, which is a nonprofit with over 300 CEOs on its board.
Wow.
These are actually, incidentally, just as a side note, the Partnership for New York City, the partnership, air quotes, for New York City, that's where a lot of the anti-Mamdani crew lives, like Steven Schwartzman.
What is the Partnership for New York City? Do you know?
It's just a nonprofit that deals with New York City problems of CEOs who live in New York City who want to fix New York City.
Sure.
So that's kind of what it is. Of the 4 companies this week, the majority of connections on each board run through the Business Roundtable. 213 connections run through the Business Roundtable. This is basically a source of lack of independence and massive groupthink. All of these people exist in the same exact echo chamber. The Partnership for New York, there's a nonprofit called Catalyst, their Business Roundtable, the Business Council. These are a handful of nonprofits that are business or trade association nonprofits where CEOs sit on those boards. Of the 55 directors on the 4 boards, 31 connections. 31 have connections back to the other directors. Okay. Of those 31, 8 have connections to the other 3 boards that are unrelated. BlackRock, JP Morgan, Home Depot, Northrop Grumman. These are unrelated companies. BlackRock and JP Morgan, you could say, are related because they're in a similar space. You'd expect some sort of connective tissue. Actually, when we look at it, there are multiple directors that have connections to Northrop Grumman and Home Depot that have no connections to one another in terms of business, except these trade association boards. Phoebe Novakovic is actually has connections to multiple of these 4 companies. She was the CEO of General Dynamics. So you could say, okay, well, I guess, Northrop Grumman makes sense, but actually she's got connections to she's on the JP Morgan board right now. So these really make no sense at all. And to get it to some sort of action, which is hard in this case, right? Because it really matters when you come to 2 companies in particular, and those are BlackRock and JP Morgan. And this is the reason why it matters. BlackRock and JP Morgan are both asset managers. They actually own the companies, like through their asset management arms and through their financing, they own or have deep relationships with the companies for whom these people are CEOs. So a director like Hans Vestberg, who was the CEO of Verizon, he sits on the BlackRock board. BlackRock owns 11-12% of Verizon. Just straight up owns their stock.
Okay.
Or if you're Phoebe Novakovic, you sit on the JP Morgan board. JP Morgan owns a percentage of General Dynamics, right? There's an upcoming paper. I just spoke to a guy named Bram Vandercroft. He's at MIT. He's a professor and academic. He has an upcoming paper that hasn't been released yet, but he was talking me through it, and there's parts of it that have been released, where he looked at asset managers when they own an executive, a company executive is on an asset manager's board.
Right.
How does the asset manager treat that company?
Sure.
Like, what do they do?
How? Do we know how?
We know everything you think when I just say that out loud.
I mean, of course, but
is what's happening.
Yeah.
What's happening is management gets basically favorable voting. They controlled for all sorts of factors, and they found that they can't explain why management would get like percentage points more in favor for them. Mm-hmm. And it's because they can trace it back to because the asset manager has the CEO on the board.
Yeah.
We know that actually that persists after the CEO leaves their board or after they stop becoming the CEO. That relationship exists regardless. Once they're on the board, it keeps going. So the ex-CEO question that you're asking, it matters because those relationships persist.
Well, you know what? To me, what you're unearthing here is, so we've long kind of complained about this, what we call the protected class of directors, right, and executives. But now you're kind of unearthing the system behind which there is a protected class, right? Because there has to be some system set up that protects each other, no?
Bram's work actually got even deeper because I asked him, I was like, why would the asset manager put the CEO on the board? Like, it seems like the company gets favorable treatment, but what does the asset manager get out of it? And he said they actually looked, and what the asset manager gets when they look through every filing, and they were exhaustive about this, they get the pension business.
Oh.
So what they're finding is the asset managers are getting on average several $1 million in fees for managing the pensions of the companies.
So it's just mutual back scratching.
It is as like closed system, protected, grafty as it gets. It is straight quid pro quo. Put a company executive on your board, you get their pension business, you vote better for for their management.
This is an AI agent, Bram Vandercroft. That's a It's part of
Bram
OpenAI?
Vandercroft is an academic, a professor at MIT.
Person.
He's a person. He's not an AI. Like I wish he was. I wish I could say
I think I was
AI.
using Bram Vandercroft 3.2. I thought on my
he's on like 6.0 now. He's
okay.
He's got some other papers about the investor democracy, and they just released an update to their paper about how asset managers vote on real assets. And actually, there's evidence that this is a little off topic, but there's evidence that when it's time for a company to reinvest make capital improvements, like if you have real assets that you need to fix,
sure.
If you drop a shareholder proposal about environmental issues right before they have to make a big reinvestment decisions, they are actually open to changing to be more environmentally friendly at that moment. If you do it any other time, they throw you out and they don't care. They actually have no interest. Super interesting stuff that he's doing. But that gets to the voting. This week is basically a case study in the ineffectiveness of the U.S. corporate board system, especially at large cap U.S. companies. It doesn't matter if the company, it doesn't matter if like the company does well, like JP Morgan's been doing really, really well, or does poorly. BlackRock's been mediocre to poor over the last 2 years.
You're only talking about one thing.
We're talking about TSR, but also earnings and revenue and growth and like lots of financial factors.
But investors might have other criteria for how if a company's doing well. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just saying like the most obvious visible ways you can say doing well in capital markets. It doesn't matter if your CEO is a big fat loudmouth like Diamond is or quiet like Warden is. Mm-hmm. The board's job in these cases isn't to represent shareholder interests. It's to represent the interests of a system, its self-interests entirely. Right. So the voting recommendation here is pretty simple. When you're doing an assessment, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for or against in these 4 boards because there's a lot of people and you can vote. You're going to vote in a lot of different ways. You should be asking the question, do they represent you, the shareholder, or a closed system in which you're perpetuating their own directorship there and at other companies? That's it. That's my recommendation.
I like that. I mean, even more important as the popular culture is catching up with this idea that there's the oligarchy is getting more powerful and this is an important thing that we have to keep track of. This is a mechanism where you can at least attempt to control the power of, right?
Well, you can start to see the reasoning behind these people being directors. There is another reason. It isn't, they're highly qualified because they ran this company or whatever. You should be asking.
It perpetuates a closed system.
How are you breaking a closed system to represent me, a shareholder? And there's a big problem when that shareholder is in on the graft, when it's an asset manager who has a company CEO on their board. That is a massive problem. And you have the opportunity right now to be voting at those companies, BlackRock and JP Morgan in particular, but it's proxy season. Every asset manager's got votes coming up too, anyone that's public. So that's it. That's what I got this week.
You also have an opportunity to finally end this podcast and go do something else because that's it. You promise you have nothing to say, but that's clearly a lie.
I just like to hear myself talk.
That's the Proxy Countdown for the week of May 11th, 2026. Join us next week when we jump back into the alternative democracy pool. Forever on the lookout for shareholder shenanigans, dopey directors, scandalous CEO pay ratios, and wayward band-aids.